The great thinkers, writers, artists, scientists of the Renaissance learned from the past to influence the future.
I am so excited to welcome everybody for today's conversation, especially all of our incredible members that are here today. Our guests from Drew University and higher education and industry had to bring in more chairs. I was worried that none of you guys were going to show up, but luckily there's interest in AI and learning new things. GenSpace's mission, as conceived by Wallis Annenberg, is to reimagine aging through wellness, connection, and lifelong learning. So when Drew University approached us and they said, hey, we want to do a panel on AI, wisdom, and lifelong learning, we jumped at the chance.
So why long life learning, right, instead of lifelong learning? There are now futurists and experts on aging and longevity who are predicting that the first people to live to be 150 years old have already been born. A longer life means a lengthening of our work lives. We are already seeing that studies are predicting that generative artificial intelligence will touch nearly every job in the workforce. So all of our mental models are going to have to shift. One of those narratives is this idea that we have to cultivate our uniquely human skills in order to contend with the artificial intelligence that we are dealing with. Because in order to be relevant in the workforce, we're not only going to have those human skills, but we're also going to have some understanding of artificial intelligence and some technical or technological expertise. It is impossible for most post-secondary institutions, most colleges and universities, cannot name what jobs will exist in the future. We don't have that crystal ball. But the skills that we need to develop are that combination of the human and technical skills. But we also have to cultivate the best problem solvers in the world.
I'm Hilary Link. I'm the president of Drew University. I would like to invite our three panelists to come up to sit in the front. Mark Friedman, Connie Yowell, and John Stewart. So fortunate at Drew University to be working with Michelle on how do we as an institution change to be a forward-thinking, AI, adaptive learning environment. So this is all the work that we're doing. So John really is focused on K through 8, K through 12 type education. Connie focused on higher education. And Mark is a cross-generational thinker and doer.
In the last 4 or 5 years, with the advent of generative artificial intelligence, starting with a moment a few years ago when I was like, oh boy, I'm in trouble now. My reaction to that after that initial knee-jerk was to really begin to understand it. I've had some very revelatory experiences over the past couple of years with generative artificial intelligence. But the Alpha School takes this to heart and uses artificial intelligence as a part of their pedagogy in order to do academics in a shorter period of time during the school day, allowing for a greater period of time during the day to dive into discovery of our passions, development of those passions, life skills that are not typically taught in the classroom.
But I started off as a tennis pro and a waitress, and then moved into, I was a youth development counselor, and then realized I needed to go back and get my PhD. I was a teaching assistant, a policy analyst at the city and federal level, because I thought maybe if I could change policy, I could do something. I was a funder. I worked in philanthropy for 15 years. That was actually the most fun. Giving out money is really kind of the bomb. I was CEO of an ed tech startup. I've had 2 very different jobs in higher ed as a higher ed administrator, and now I'm back being a professor at Northeastern.
And so when I got into the working world, focused on young people, I was really interested, like John was saying, in mentoring and being served. And so it raised this whole question, if these kinds of relationships matter, where are the human beings to do the things that only human beings can do? Kids, and he said, what every child needs is at least one adult who's irrationally crazy about them.
Malcolm Gladwell has written that one can become a master in something after dedicating 10,000 hours of practice to it. But what does that look like now in the age of AI when very few people are dedicating 10,000 hours to anything. And if we don't have 10,000 hours to shift careers, to Michelle's point, 20 or 30 times, how else in today's world can you get good at something?
We all have some sort of the beginning of what it means to be human in a set of skills, but it actually takes practice.
I think the wisdom comes from pattern recognition, of having it seen enough to be able to understand what it all adds up to.
We have the internet. We have more information than any generation has ever been seen in the history of the world. What the hell do you do with all that information, and how do you make sense of it? AI is really a set of computational mathematical approaches to taking all that information and organizing it into patterns. How I use it to make a decision in the world is all up to me.
My experience with generative AI is that it really is a reflection of what I put into it.
Why do universities exist in today's age?
Education, both K-12 and higher ed, has always been one of the core pillars that is a cornerstone institution to ensure that a democracy continues and flourishes. I think what all of those things look like with AI is dramatically different than it's looked before.
It really is about using artificial intelligence, using technology in order to amplify our humanity.
But in this future-oriented convening, I'm going to do something a little radical, which is to take us back to the past, to the Italian Renaissance. The great thinkers, writers, artists, scientists of the Renaissance also did something really radical. They learned from the past to influence the future, which is what we're trying to do at Drew University for the field of higher education, because we really do need to rethink higher education in this new world that Michelle laid out for us. We need people who have multiple perspectives, and in a way, that is something that AI can give us. What we really need is something that Alberti, who was a theorist on painting, wrote back in 1434. And that is to see the world through different lenses. In other words, if we change where we stand, we change what we see. AI is an incredible tool to allow us to see things reflected back at us that we never thought about, because the world of knowledge right now is so fluid. Crystallized intelligence isn't going to help us keep up with how quickly things are changing. It is incumbent upon those of us with some sense of power in higher education to ask, are higher education institutions too stuck, too structured with silos, departments, individual majors? Are they inadvertently preventing students from becoming the very polymaths, the people with range that our society desperately needs? Higher education needs to change, and we believe that we have the ability to rethink it and to be at the vanguard of this. And we're still on this journey. We haven't figured all this out. We're making a lot of progress, but today is a really fun reminder to me of how far we are starting to come. And we at Drew will take all of this learning as we iterate, as we experiment, and we're going to find a more relevant, a more accessible, a more just, less biased, and more meaningful future for higher education that will use AI as our friend and not our enemy. And we can learn so much from the past to chart the pathway forward for the future, but we have to understand the future is now.